Hi! Real-time strategy games are often associated with hardcore sports, insane click speeds, spreadsheets, and complex micromanagement. But let's be honest, we love this genre for a lot more than just its tactical depth. We love it for the scale, for those moments when you can forget about the economy, zoom the camera all the way in, and watch an absolute movie unfold right on your screen. When multi-ton tanks smash through brick walls, thousands of soldiers clash in brutal hand-to-hand combat under pouring rain, and orbital lasers slice right through the armor of giant space cruisers. In this video, I'll be talking about games that crank the visual epicness all the way to 11. This is a list of the most beautiful, atmospheric, and cinematic RTS games out there. Iron Harvest. Welcome to an alternate 1920s, where instead of your usual tanks, giant dieselpunk mechs rule the battlefield. Just picture this, the peaceful rural landscapes of post-war Europe being torn apart by massive walking machines. When a heavy, multi-ton mech doesn't just walk around a brick house, but plows right through it to flank the enemy, it looks incredibly cinematic. Infantry scramble in panic to hide in the trenches, while the screen lights up with punchy explosions and debris flying everywhere. It might not be the fastest RTS in the world, but every single battle here feels heavy and brutal. Warhammer: Dawn of War 3. Now let's talk about the latest installment of Dawn of War. You can say what you want about its gameplay experiments, but when it comes to pure, unadulterated visual spectacle, this game absolutely delivers. It perfectly captures that over-the-top, grotesque, and massive scale of the Warhammer universe. The special effects here are just insane. Take the orbital laser strike, for example. It scorches the Earth and physically lifts enemy units into the air before completely vaporizing them. If you're looking for a game that looks like a high-budget sci-fi blockbuster, you've found it. Sudden Strike 5. Moving on to a hot new release that just recently dropped. This game takes the legendary World War II tactical series and cranks the scale to the absolute max. The devs completely ditched base building so you can focus 100% on managing your troops. And there's plenty of room to play around. The maps are absolutely massive, and you have over 300 types of highly detailed vehicles at your disposal, including massive armored trains. The visual leap from the previous game is seriously impressive. Thanks to a heavily expanded camera range, you can zoom all the way out to take in the sheer scale of the offensive, and then zoom right back in to watch heavy tanks trade shots. Company of Heroes 3. When it comes to atmospheric battlefields and Hollywood-level destruction, Company of Heroes 3 is simply in a league of its own. By moving the combat to the sun-drenched Mediterranean and the mountains of Italy, the game delivers an incredible contrast between beautiful landscapes and the total devastation of war. The engine works in overdrive to show you one of the best destruction physics models in the strategy genre. It's the sheer dynamic of the combat that makes the game so spectacular. You literally see the battlefield change. Artillery strikes leave deep craters in the dirt, and tanks don't just drive around buildings. They smash right through the walls, burying enemy infantry under a pile of realistically crumbling bricks. Call to Arms: Gates of Hell, Ostfront. This game isn't trying to be a glossy blockbuster. It shows the brutal reality of the Eastern Front. The level of detail here is borderline obsessive. When you zoom in, you can spot every single rivet on the armor, the mud on the soldiers' greatcoats, and the way tank treads realistically churn up the thick spring mud. But the ultimate killer feature is the direct control mode. At any given moment, you can take control of a tank or a machine gunner in third-person view and fire manually. It is the most hardcore, immersive, and visually authentic strategy game you can get. Terminator: Dark Fate, Defiance. This is a very gritty, bleak, and brutal tactical strategy game where the remnants of humanity wage a desperate guerrilla war against the machines. The atmosphere here is absolutely top-notch. Ruined cities, a constant sense of danger, and the sound of the heavy, metallic footsteps of Terminators will make you believe in this post-apocalypse from the very first minutes. But the game truly shines in the heat of combat. The visual contrast between the dirty, dusty ruins and the blindingly bright flashes of plasma weapons looks absolutely stunning. The destruction physics don't disappoint either. Buildings crumble under heavy fire, while vehicles get realistically covered in soot and blown to pieces. Homeworld 3. This is, without exaggeration, one of the most beautiful and mesmerizing strategy games out there today. Its main draw is the fully 3D combat set against the backdrop of colossal, abandoned megaliths. You command your fleet amidst giant cosmic ruins that serve as cover, and the scale of these structures makes your ships look like tiny glowing grains of sand. You could watch these battles endlessly. Fighters pull off unimaginable barrel rolls to dodge incoming fire, heavy cruisers trade massive broadside salvos, and the light from distant stars and explosions dances beautifully across the hulls of your ships. Ashes of the Singularity, Escalation. This is a game about planetary-scale warfare where hyper-advanced AIs clash on the battlefield. You're not just commanding an army, you're controlling an absolute avalanche of metal and energy. Just picture this, giant, lumbering dreadnoughts covered in dozens of turrets slowly hovering over an alien world, escorted by a literal cloud of thousands of drones and hovering tanks. The full visual power of this game is unleashed the moment these armadas collide. The screen is instantly covered in a thick web of glowing projectiles. Homing missiles leave hundreds of twisting smoke trails in their wake, lasers pierce right through the battlefield, and heavy plasma volleys light up entire sectors of the map. Sins of a Solar Empire 2. This is a unique blend of grand strategy and intense real-time combat. The universe here feels truly alive. Planets actually rotate along their orbits, shifting the tactical landscape on the fly. You're building a massive empire, but when it comes time to defend your borders, the game delivers unbelievably high-quality visuals. The beauty of the engine is that you can zoom all the way out to see the entire star system, and then instantly zoom right back in on a single ship. And there's plenty to look at. Highly detailed dreadnought models, the flashes of energy shields, swarms of homing missiles, and the point defense guns desperately trying to shoot them down. Total War Warhammer 3. When it comes to dark fantasy, Warhammer 3 is simply unmatched. The game's biggest trump card is its incredible visual contrast and breathtaking art design. You can have the ice-clad, hardened defenders of Kislev clashing with a grotesque, rotting horde of Nurgle demons on the exact same battlefield. Lining up your troops against the grim, magic-twisted landscapes of the realms of chaos is its own kind of aesthetic pleasure. Every faction is crafted with an obsessive attention to detail, making the battles feel like a collision of entirely different universes. But the real magic happens when you turn off the UI and drop the camera right into the thick of the fight. Massive, beautifully animated monsters plow into enemy infantry lines, tossing soldiers around like ragdolls. Legendary lords duel right in the middle of this meat grinder, while magical artillery rains down bursts of multicolored flames, leaving smoking craters in the enemy ranks. Age of Empires 4. This is the perfect example of how to modernize a timeless classic. The developers carefully preserved that meditative gameplay of building massive cities and gathering resources, but wrapped it all up in a gorgeous modern package. Every civilization looks unique. The lighting falls softly on the tiled roofs of houses, and the clashing of swords and the shouts of soldiers create an incredibly dense atmosphere of a historical battle. But the game plays its biggest visual hand during sieges. When you roll heavy trebuchets up to an enemy castle and start raining fire, the screen turns into a true physics sandbox. Stone walls don't just magically disappear. They realistically crack, crumble into pieces, and collapse in thick clouds of dust, opening a breach for your infantry. Dune, Spice Wars. Welcome to Arrakis, which greets us with some seriously stylish visuals. The game masterfully captures the vibe of the most dangerous planet in the universe. Endless sand dunes with dragonfly-like ornithopters hovering above, and heavy harvesters methodically gathering the precious spice. The visual style relies heavily on contrast. The bright desert sun gives way to ominous, blinding sandstorms with static electricity crackling inside them. And the main star of this world, of course, is the sandworm. The true spectacle of the game peaks in those exact moments when the ground beneath your army begins to treacherously shake. Watching the sand part as a colossal maw bursts from the depths to swallow an entire squad or heavy vehicle in a split second. That's an experience that will give you goosebumps every single time. Starship Troopers, Terran Command. This is literally concentrated adrenaline based on Starship Troopers. The spectacle of this game is built on one simple but flawless rule. You're always outnumbered, and the enemies are terrifyingly abundant. Thin defensive lines, where infantrymen tightly grip their assault rifles, look incredibly fragile against a living, swarming ocean of giant arachnids pushing in from all sides. The darkness of the canyons is torn apart by muzzle flashes, flamethrowers bathe swarms of bugs in roaring flames, and chunks of armor go flying from grenade blasts. But the coolest feature is that enemy corpses don't disappear. By the end of a tough mission, the battlefield is literally buried under mountains of dead bugs that your infantry has to trudge through. Aliens, Dark Descent. Now let's sharply shift the scale and jump into some claustrophobic tactical horror. Dark Descent proves that a strategy game doesn't have to be grand in scale to look absolutely stunning. Instead of wide-open fields, you get the dark, abandoned corridors of space stations. The atmosphere is so thick you could cut it with a knife. You constantly hear the nerve-wracking beep of the motion tracker, and your main weapon becomes the dynamic lighting system. Flashlight beams frantically sweep across ventilation shafts, catching sinister shadows in the dark. The visual catharsis hits when the xenomorphs finally attack. The dark screen instantly lights up with the strobe-like flashes of pulse rifles. Aliens sprint across the walls and ceilings, acid blood burns right through the metal floor, and your squad desperately falls back, pouring fire down the hallway. Manor Lords. This is a strategy game from a solo developer that looks better than a lot of big-budget hits. And while you'll spend most of your time peacefully building your medieval village, the real-time combat here looks fantastic. There's no magic or massive armies, but there is an obsessive attention to detail. Militia fighters get exhausted, covered in mud and blood, and their gear looks frighteningly authentic. You can zoom right in and watch as a squad locks shields on command to brace for impact, or hear the dull thud of arrows burying themselves into wooden structures. The hand-to-hand combat is fully motion captured, so sword and spear strikes feel heavy and lethal. It's a gritty, grounded, and incredibly atmospheric recreation of medieval warfare that takes your breath away with its realism. Ancestors' Legacy. This is a strategy game where the focus isn't on global map control, but on fierce skirmishes between small squads. You command tough Vikings, Slavs, or Anglo-Saxons, and the atmosphere here chills you to the bone. Dense forests, pouring rain, burning villages, and the clash of steel create an incredibly dense sense of immersion. The main feature of this game is the cinematic camera. With the press of a button, the view drops right into the thick of the fight. And there's plenty to see. The developers used motion capture for the animations, so the infantry isn't just swinging at the air, they pull off brutal, realistic attacks and executions. Watching warriors lock swords with a loud scrape, hide behind shields from a hail of arrows, and savagely hack at each other knee-deep in mud never gets old. Last Train Home. This is a unique blend of survival and tactical strategy with an absolutely phenomenal atmosphere. Your base is a heavily armored steam train struggling its way through an icy wasteland. The contrast between the silent, white snow and the black armored train belching out smoke and steam looks incredibly stylish and cinematic on screen. The battles here aren't massive army clashes, but desperate tactical skirmishes in forests and ruined villages. The game's spectacle lies in its harsh realism and details. Soldiers navigate trenches, artillery shells tear up the frozen ground, and when you call in fire support right from your train, the screen shakes from massive explosions. It's a highly tense, cold, and aesthetically beautiful game that keeps you on the edge of your seat every single second. Age of Mythology: Retold. This is a gorgeous remake of a legendary classic that takes all the best parts of the original. The game looks incredibly vibrant. Bright colors, highly detailed ancient cities, and smoothly animated mythical creatures fighting shoulder to shoulder with regular humans. But the real thrill kicks in when the god powers come into play. It's one thing to watch a shootout between archers, and a whole different story to see a devastating meteor shower rain down from the heavens on your command, or a massive tornado wipe out an enemy base, lifting buildings and soldiers into the air. And when a colossal titan steps onto the map in the late game, literally trampling entire armies underfoot, the epicness hits the absolute maximum. They are billions. This is a steampunk strategy game where the remnants of humanity build fortified colony cities. The design here is brilliant: massive stone walls, gears, steam-powered machinery, and heavily armed guard towers. The atmosphere of constant paranoia and preparation for the inevitable is captured perfectly. The entire essence and main spectacle of the game are unleashed during the final wave. It's something you have to see with your own eyes, a literal living ocean of tens of thousands of infected crashing against your walls. Just imagine an endless horde breaking against your defenses while machine guns overheat from non-stop firing and flamethrower towers torch entire streets. It's an insanely massive spectacle of desperate defense that you just can't look away from. Tempest Rising. Rounding out our list is a game made for anyone who misses the golden era of strategy games in the vein of Command and Conquer. Tempest Rising takes the classic formula of base building and two highly distinct factions and drops it into a modern engine. The visuals here are completely action-packed. Night maps are lit up by neon resources, the vehicles look aggressive and futuristic, and the game's pacing never gives you a second to catch your breath. Plasma cannon fire, punchy orbital laser beams, armored vehicles blowing to pieces, and massive mushroom clouds rising over enemy bases. The special effects here are turned all the way up. It's pure, concentrated, explosive, and incredibly dynamic action. There are moments when words simply aren't needed. Actions of this scale speak for themselves. It's an amazing feeling, standing right in the eye of the storm and watching something absolute and truly grand emerge from tiny details. And for the sake of these emotions, when the visual power simply takes your breath away, it is definitely worth your time. I'm sure there are a few more hidden gems out there. Which RTS games do you think have the most epic visual scale? Share them down below. The Image Game channel was with you. Have a nice day.